Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Northwest Augmentative Communication Society's AAC Learning Networks. And we are in our third uh, session called Thoughtful Inquiry, Spelling for Communication. My name is Marcy Ravelli, and I am a speech-language pathologist, and I am joined with my co-host, Joe Risto, who is also a speech-language pathologist. We are so excited to have you here today to round out the last of our three series on this topic. And we're going to jump right in because we have a big panel of people that we're excited to introduce to you and excited to interview and get to know better, and then have time at the end for some questions and answers, hopefully. The only housekeeping I have is that if you are here and you would like continuing education credit, a certificate specifically, we will have a link in the chat at the end of the series. If you click on the link, you will be led to a survey, and if you fill out that survey, we will send you a certificate. So a few more things to hold on. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Statement of use. NWACS embraces the statement that all individuals have a right to communicate. NWACS embraces the statement that all individuals have a right to access literacy. The views expressed in this series do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of NWACS. No endorsement by NWACS is implied regarding any device, manufacturer, resource, or strategy mentioned. As you can see, we had part one, we said, why are we here? Part two was integrating what we know. And part three is going deeper. We're going to do a quick summary of part one and two. We're going to have some progression videos that kind of show what it might look like to learn to be a speller. And then we're going to have our panelist of AAC users. These are our learning objectives. And Joe, I think you're going to read this slide.
Yes, this is me. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time tonight. So as with our other learning networks on this topic, we wanted to just start by clarifying some terminology. When we say spelling for communication or spelling as communication, we're referring to the use of generative literacy skills as a primary or supplementary form of augmentative/alternative communication. So spelling as communication encompasses a complex interaction of many dynamic skill sets, including but not exclusive to literacy skills, motor skills, expressive and receptive language skills, and strategic skills, which is a fancy word that speech therapists use to encompass a range of skills that are around using an alternative form of communication in a strategic way. So executive functioning skills, how to use it, when to use it, and determining what types of things will be optimal for communication. The generative use of the use of generative language literacy skills as a primary form of AAC looks different for different people, as we'll see tonight. It may have different forms or modalities, such as handwriting, typing, keyboarding, partner-assisted scanning, use of alternative pencils, such as an eye gaze frame, a print flip chart, alphabet board, letter board, etc. And it may or may not pair with other communication modalities, such as symbol-based communication or verbal speech. When we say spelling for or as communication, we are not referring to a specific method, intervention, or program. And here tonight, we started this whole conversation as a thoughtful inquiry because we are committed to listening to people who should be in this conversation, but are currently excluded. Nothing about us without us. We want to center autistic AAC users in this conversation because they have so much to teach us about how they communicate and how they're able to communicate. During this webinar, we will take steps to minimize trauma to our AAC guests, up to and including removing participants who are engaging in behaviors that constitute harassment, including going after any part of identity for any of our AAC user panelists. We are not open to critique about the criticism of identities, people, and lived experience, especially for AAC users. We do invite open discussion and curiosity around the topics and ideas regarding spelling as communication, because we know there are a lot out there. And we do reserve the right to turn off the chat to respect and focus on our panelists tonight as we are centering their voices. And we will prioritize overall the voices of AAC users. So if you are an AAC user in the audience tonight and you do want to self-identify as such, wonderful. If not, you can feel free to private message one of the co-hosts, Marcy or myself, so we can support you to get your voice heard here tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, here I go. I'm going to start revving up so we can speed through. This is the summary of part one. We do have a recording on our NWACS YouTube site. But during part one, here's what we talked about. We talked about the topic of spelling as a communication method, and we defined that just as Joe stated just a moment ago. In part one, we talked about 4 types of evidence. That external lab-based evidence is only one of 4 considerations when we're thinking about supporting our non-speaking AAC users. We discussed that some autistic non-speakers have learned to use spelling for communication through different techniques. Some of those techniques are facilitated communication, rapid prompting methods, spelling to communicate, speller's method, and so forth. There is the notion that these are considered lacking in required evidence by such organizations as the American Speech Language Hearing Association. We also know that some autistic non-speakers have become independent typers. Not all of these individuals use the programs listed above. Some learn to read, write, and spell for communication in other ways. And we asked the question, what can we learn from all of these individuals and their diverse experiences? And then we ended part one with, in the profession of AAC, we have not done enough to consider access, which includes the sensory and motor involvement in our assessments and treatment programs specifically for autistic AAC users. So if you didn't get to see that video, please consider going back and watching it. And then summary part 2, then we jumped in to talking about literacy. That literacy curriculums are available to teach comprehensive literacy skills, but that there are challenges for our non-speaking AAC users to access literacy, and they are vast. They include such things as the nature of the instruction, difficulty assessing and setting goals, classroom culture, lack of professional training, the belief system in the classroom, the lack of time and resources, the lack of time and resource. I mean, I can just say that one over and over again, right? The lack of time and resources, and the intrinsic differences of the individual, the multifaceted nature of learning AAC, literacy and motor access, right? These are all the challenges of accessing a literacy curriculum. But just like some students in general education, some autistic non-speaking AAC users just learned how to read. And then there were others that need to learn how to read, write, and develop reliable motor access or have gaps in splinter skills. So of course, just like folks going through general education, there's a range of how folks learn to read, write, and spell. In part two, we said we know very little about what could be the predictable stages towards independent typing and spelling. All of these dynamic variable skill sets exist in the same learner. Sorry, I can't see my notes. There we are. And we want to know, what is the progression of the literacy development, language development, and motor skills, and then how do they intersect and inform each other? We ended the evening saying that we need to pull research from multidisciplinary bodies of evidence that are related to good instruction and conditions for learning, and combine it with comprehensive curriculum that addresses literacy, language, and motor access and sensory motor supports. And then finally, I know we say this a lot in this series, but we must be able to approach these topics with curiosity and humility in order to collaborate with our clients respectfully and thoughtfully. So there we go. I'm going to turn it back over to Joe. Go ahead.
Okay, and we're going to go pretty quickly through this part, but something that we had talked about and alluded to in part two of the series as well was with literacy instruction and any sort of instruction, there's a progression that we can get to, that we can go through. And we've seen throughout this series that literacy is part of the progression and learning towards being able to spell as a form of communication. And there's a large motor component to this learning for spelling as communication for many of our presenters and panelists here today, as well as others. But the typical programs out there are doing an either or sort of thing. We see some programs that focus more on the motor aspect of spelling as communication, and others that focus more on the literacy aspect. So we wanted to give a little bit of an example of progression that kind of combines them both, because I think many people haven't actually seen this. We've seen people who can spell to communicate, but we don't see necessarily how they got there. I have two examples here. Last time, if you were able to attend, you'll remember that we watched an example of a young woman with Rett syndrome who didn't have any control of her hands use eye gaze in order to demonstrate some literacy skills that she has and that she was developing. This is a second video here linked, actually, if you want to go back into it. We're not going to show it tonight, just in so we can get to our speakers. But this is where that same teacher, Susan Norwell, is coaching two communication partners for a young woman with Rett syndrome through how she scaffolds both motor and literacy participation for someone who's learning to do both at the same time. Use, in this case, her eyes to learn how to read and write. We do want to take a little bit of time to look at a second video, which shows a young man's progression through both literacy and motor ability to spell. He is using the rapid prompting method. His coach is using the rapid prompting method to help support him. And so we'll take a look at that. But before we do, you will see little glimpses. It's a longer video, but we'll see little glimpses of his progression over 3 years of instruction. And I just want to point out how there are parallels to what we see in these Rett University videos, the videos above. In terms of scaffolding for spelling, you'll hear his communication partner prompting him to continue putting 2 L's on one of the words. You'll see there's coaching and accommodations for motor. In this case, he's using his fingers, but she also coaches his eye gaze in this, and also provides supports for his sensory needs and attentional needs. So Marcy, go ahead and we'll start off with a first clip right at the beginning of his journey.
We do, right?
I'm going to try and share again. Bear with me. Can I get a thumbs up, Joe and Artie? You can see the video okay? Okay, wonderful. Uh, Joe, I have that we're going to play this from the beginning just for about a minute. Is that okay? All right, here we go. Oh, and tell me if you can hear it okay.
I said some eggs are very, very what? Some of them are very violet or small. Which one? Good. That was nice moving it over too. S. Good. Keep going. On it. Yeah, there you go. M. Good. S. M. S. M. Good. Keep going. A. S. M. A. Good. SMA, keep going, SMA, oops, I'm sorry. L, yeah, you need two of them, remember? Two, I know, no one likes two. Small, good, small.
Okay, that was the first one. Joe, did you want to make a comment about that?
So, I mean, you can see he's using larger letters on 3 sets of boards. The teacher is scaffolding. She's getting the board with the right letter on it. She's giving him a choice of 2, violet or small. One is kind of more out there and one is more tied to the context. And you can already hear her supporting both his eye gaze and how he's moving his pencil. And her giving him the pencil is part of that scaffolding for that attention, right? She's letting him know, oh, it's time to spell, it's time to do this task. And for motor initiation, which for folks with apraxia and dyspraxia, just starting a motor movement can frequently be one of the hardest parts. Yeah, now for part 2.
Okay, so we're going to go to 358.
And I'd encourage you to watch this whole video. We don't have time because we have a lot to do tonight, but it's a great video.
They had come to the first accord, if you will, ACCORD, accord or agreement for the fight against global warming, WARMING. So what did I say? I said that they were really trying to find an answer to what? Come on. Good. G, L, O, key and look, up. B, A, L, global. W, good. W, good. Keep going. A, R, M, good. I, N, good. So what are your thoughts on it? M, A, Y, B, good. M-A-Y-B, find it. Doing the B again. All right, B. Good, come on, B. Do B again. B, key and keep going. Keep going. I know, come on. B. Come on. B. Keep going. E, maybe. Good. L. Good. E. S. S. F. Keep going. Come on. F. A. Keep going. Come on. I got F-A. I don't need it again. Find it. C. T. O. R. Keep going. I. Keep going. Key in. I. Do the I again. Do the I again.
And so he spells out maybe less factories. She was asking him about how to reduce global warming. And you can see again, she's scaffolding. He's got all 26 letters on a letterboard now, but you can hear her clicking her fingers to kind of alert him through an auditory channel. You can hear her backing him up and helping him move forward. And she's kind of pushing the board against his finger for a little bit of sensory input too whenever he hits that letter. And then we can watch the last little clip.
They have been looking closely at Jupiter's moon, Europa, Europa, and Saturn's moon, Enceladus. So Enceladus. Okay, these have been the prime candidates for life away from Earth. Okay, in regards to what? In regards to M, yeah, O, good, keep going. You need two of them, yep, two, O, M-O-O, and good, Kian, move it over now. M-O-O, all the way. S, good, moons, yes.
Joe, did you want that last part?
Yeah, oh, that's it. So that's Kian, and you can kind of see in this very rapid fire clip how over 3 years he moved from, giving very short answers with a lot of support to, in that second to last clip, he had his first, what is called sometimes more open answer. So instead of providing an answer that's known to the communication partner, she's asking him for his own thoughts. And that's where the true, spelling as a form of communication comes in. And we just wanted to show that because I think a lot of times, in the media and things like that, we see spellers who are very far along their journey, or we see them at one moment in their journey. And seeing them progress through can be really informative, and I think shows us how we can support folks in this journey and how it is a journey. And there are thousands and thousands of hours of practice that we don't get to see that go into the amazing things that we are seeing coming out for people who are using spelling as a form of AAC.
Thank you, Joe. Um, one of the things that I don't know who we have in our audience tonight. If you are an AAC user or a parent of an AAC user who's who's on this journey, maybe these videos looked familiar to you. I know when I first found some of these videos myself, um, I was so excited to see the progression. Because Joe, I think you're so right. I think that um, we don't see the hard work that goes into the growth. And so thanks, Joe, for sharing that with us. I think we are ready to do our panelists. And so without further ado, the folks on our panel tonight are Morgan Brewer, Sam Bhatia, Stone Coffer, and Lavender Fields. We are so excited to have them introduce themselves. We have a series of questions for each of our panelists. Stone and Sam have already been a part of our session 1 and session 2. So we're going to focus the first couple questions with our new panelists, Morgan and Lavender, and then we'll bring Stone and Sam back in to answer some more questions, learning about all their journeys. And so first, I would like introductions, if Morgan, who goes by Mo, could introduce herself.
I am Morgan, and I am 24 years old. I go to Summit Community Center, and I am studying to be a docent at the zoo. I love to travel and to watch movies and musicals. I am going to Europe to see my sister in April. I started spelling 2 years ago.
Hope you could hear that.
We can hear that. Thank you. Thank you, Mo. The next person who we'd like to introduce is Lavender. And I think, Joe, are you going to read for Lavender? Go ahead.
I'll be reading Lavender's answers, but they are here with us tonight. So my name is Lavender. I am a white Jewish non-binary person living in Northeast Ohio. I am an autistic non-speaker with apraxia and multiple disabilities. I consider myself an AAC user and a lowercase s speller. I spell to communicate with the support of a communication partner, but do not use a formal method and do not consider myself part of the culture that is formed around spelling. I communicate by typing on a keyboard or letterboard and by pointing to symbols on Proloquo to go. I love being immersed in the natural world and looking for cool plants. I like finding threads in music and stories and things I have read or heard and putting ideas together in a tapestry that is just my own. Much of my writing about non-speaking identity, disability, and community is focused on much the same thing, taking bits of my experience and others, lining them up with different communities and ideas about our lives, and putting them together and apart until they are broken off just enough to fit all of us.
Thank you, Lavender. Welcome. Welcome, Morgan. Welcome, Lavender. We're going to ask for a reintroduction from Sam. Sam, are you ready?
Yes.
My name is Sam. I live in North Seattle. I am 20 years old. I am doing my AA, which takes up most of my time as I type one letter at a time using my index finger. I live with my mom and stepfather. I love doing complex jigsaw puzzles. I like to bike and swim long distances.
Thank you, Sam. And then we're going to ask for Stone to introduce themselves and actually, you've figured out how to unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are here. Yeah, we got on the laptop in the last second, so we're all good. Epic.
And so David will be reading for Stone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Stone's dad, David. My name is Stone Coffer, and it should be 19 actually. He had his birthday since our last session, and I go to Bright Mountain Academy in Seattle, Washington.
Thank you, Stone. Welcome, all four of you. We're so excited to have you. Okay, this question is going back to Mo. And the question is, how did you communicate when you were younger?
How did you communicate when you were younger?
Used my Proloquo on the iPad.
Now, Mo, I have to come clean and say that I first met you when you were 3 years old. And before you used Proloquo, you used Advantaged with Unity. And so you've had a long journey with AAC.
Yes, an evolution.
Yeah. Thank you, Mo. And then Lavender, how did you communicate when you were younger?
I have always been fully non-speaking. I learned very early on that everyone around me could somehow magically make sounds that became words, or that they could affect the world and have people know what they think, could learn about what is happening around them. I could not do this and never would be able to. I tried to communicate with people through my body pressing up against theirs, or putting objects in people's faces that I liked the feel or smell of, or that had personal meaning to me. Sometimes my body overreached. I could not estimate how hard I was shoving myself at people, and this hurt them. People would usually say this was just sensory seeking. My behavior therapist said I did this because I saw people as objects, and I need to learn they were people. Even my parents and the people in my life who understood the most did not get it. They refused to think I did not see them as people. They knew that was not true. Instead, they would say I was trying to connect how I knew how because I didn't understand language. And when they taught me language, I would stop. But that was not true. I understood most language, but did not know I would ever get to use words myself. Just hear them and let them churn in my mind. When I was 7, I got my first communication device with Proloquo to go and LAMP. LAMP was impossible for me to figure out because no one taught me how to use it or explained it was something to communicate with. So when I, quote, refused to use it, my speech therapist said to take it away because I did not understand. On Proloquo, I started with only food, some core words, a few objects, and some feeling words. The pictures were so big that my eyes could only process one button at a time and would stare at that one button and involuntarily repeat it because I could not get my eyes to move. For the longest time, I thought want was the only word I could say because that was the only button my eyes saw. I discovered the keyboard option on my own, and I taught myself to type. It took a while to realize typing was for communication, so mostly I typed strings of satisfying words or dialogue I heard in the air, so I could see what it looked like as text. When my therapy team noticed I could type, they started to model more and add more words for me to say. I started using a mix of symbols and typing. I was still not getting the motor support to say all I wanted to, but it was worlds better than having no way to tell the world a thing. As a teenager, I started having medical issues that changed a lot of my motor abilities. I could not move my arm reliably to use my device. A family friend, who is still my main communication partner and member of my support circle, researched RPM, bought Soma's books, started spelling with me, and training my parents. I also used, and still use, physical support to keep my arm up when fatigue and muscle weakness and trouble feeling my arm in space made it hard to type. I had a few sessions with a local RPM practitioner, but stopped because it was too expensive for my family. The letterboard changed so very much for me. I still can't explain the inner why, but it was so much freer than anything I had used before.
Thank you, Lavender. There's so much to dive into on your answer there. I'm so thrilled. We'll make the slide deck available to folks so they can go back and kind of think through your answer. There's so many tidbits um, of your life when you were younger that I appreciate you sharing. Okay. The next questions are geared towards both Morgan and Lavender. Morgan, the first part of this question is, what helped you in learning to communicate by spelling?
What helped you? Okay. Go ahead.
Tracy was my first teacher and she believed in me. I took to it so fast because I was eager to share my thoughts. I was so ready to communicate with everyone.
Thank you, Morgan. And then the second part of that question is, when is communication difficult? What gets in the way?
I need time to spell and a trusted partner.
Yeah, so true. Didn't I say right? Time, and trusted partner, both really key takeaways. Lots of time to get your thoughts out. Thank you, Mo. Lavender, what helped you in learning to communicate by spelling?
I need my body to be regulated enough and to be out of pain for me to communicate reliably. Getting a lot of physical input and stimming my soul out in between each stint of typing is a lifesaver. Some days, some forms of communicating are possible, but not other ones. So I may be able to type the names of every plant species native to Ohio, or pages of lyrics from favorite artists, or long social media comments about disability and communication, but not be able to say what body part hurts, or type a word to my support team about daily life things. Different motor plans and different language modes come to me in a way that is not predictable. What helps me the most is always having access to all the ways I could possibly communicate, no matter how advanced what I say is. I need to know that anything I have to say is good enough. I need a lot of time to think about what I want to say, retrieve the words, and get my body moving to type. But I also need a communication partner who can tell when I am taking the processing time I need and when I am getting stuck and so desperately need a prompt to initiate. When I am having the most trouble finding the words I need, I prefer to point to symbols to communicate. I need my communication partner to direct me towards corners of my device that have words I might want to say next, so I can keep going on my own, by saying stuff like, if you want to say two, get your eyes to the left. Initiation is the thing that slows me down the most. Usually, someone else will support my arm at first, and on a good motor day, I can finish the rest speedily on my own. Other times, I will need support throughout. Sometimes I can type when someone just touches my shoulder. It depends on who my communication partner is and how much energy I have.
Thank you, Lavender. And then that gets to the next question. Good segue. When is communication difficult? What gets in the way?
After I have a seizure, I need at least 2 hours before I can start to type. My body is so very exhausted and achy. I cannot spell because I cannot move my body. And sometimes letters cease to form words and words cease to make sense. Also, when I feel like there is a certain way people want me to communicate, or that communication is a test I can fail or pass, I get dysregulated and blocked from communicating at all.
That's a really important point. Thank you, Lavender. Oops. Okay. The next question is, how did you learn to read and spell? Did it come to you naturally or did someone teach you? And we'll start with Morgan.
Tell them, sweetheart. You want to tell them?
I taught myself to read. I just paid attention in school even when no one knew I could do it. I also listened to my grandma, mom, and Kate at home to build my vocabulary.
Thank you, Morgan. And Stone, go ahead. How did you learn to read and spell? And did it come naturally to you or did somebody teach you?
I taught myself how to read and spell. I was 4 years old when I made myself read books.
You are right.
And mostly I'm writing from memory. More or less, I paid attention to how people spoke and wrote.
Thanks, Stone. Okay, and I think with this one, Lavender, you were going to respond to this in the chat. And I don't know if you have your answer at the ready or if you want some time to get that one to us. Sorry, we didn't prep that in advance, Lavender. I'll give you a moment.
I'm working on getting it into the chat as well. Lavender, so I can pop that in there because I have your Google Doc. And then I can read it out loud here.
Oh, you are a rock star. That's what Sophie said. That's really lovely. That's lovely, honey. Really doing good, honey.
Okay, I think Lavender's answer is in the chat. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, give me one moment. There's a second part. I think the chat is limiting the number of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Morgan said, she just told him in the chat, I feel good about where I am on this journey. Was this?
Okay. Okay, I got most of it in the chat. I'm going to read it out loud and then I'll finish putting the rest of it in the chat. Sorry about that, Lavender. Okay. Lavender says, I do not have a clear memory for how I learned to read, but I can remember bits and pieces. When I was really little, my mom would write down the lyrics to songs she sang to me and put on lyric videos, which helped me connect sounds to text. Also looking at captions while watching Yo Gabba Gabba or the Backyardigans. Once I could type a little bit, I would do experiments with taking words out of a sentence and letters out of a word and see how the sound changed. But other than that, at school/therapy, no one taught me how to read in a very full way. It always stayed very basic and so very humiliating, full of alphabet sounds and those books with a bunch of boring 3-letter words that rhyme, like mat on one page and cat on another. I was in a, quote, low incidence classroom. For the kids, they decided had to sing the days of the week and match colors in high school. Most of my education as a teenager was through RPM lessons. I got my GED in 2021 and took some online college classes on Coursera. If I really dig into how I type and read now, I do think there have been some downsides to not getting explicit support with reading. gaps in how I use words that maybe wouldn't be there if I got support on the right timeline. But I also do not know exactly what that timeline would be. Not all of us teach ourselves to read, and that is important too. Some people I talk to, especially parents of young non speakers, helped me understand that. I think some of those people may be watching this right now, but many of us do. It is not something teachers and therapists would be able to pick up on, or at least not very easily. People kept using very basic teaching with me well past when I could read full sentences, and they did it in such a disrespectful, babying way. But I had no way to show because all the tests, no matter how adapted, seemed needed some level of motor control. I think, quote, presume you've got this, and if you need help, we'll give you help, end quote, is a model that would have helped me as I was growing up in all areas.
Thank you, Lavender. Okay, we're going to get into the next question, which was more of an open-ended question. And in the spirit of another AAC user that I've been chatting with over email, who expressed that the biographies are important to know, but also the people, like who are you? And so I asked our panelists to answer one of these questions. What is your current passion? What wakes you up in the morning with excitement? What is new that you are doing or learning about? And I will start the answers with Morgan. Go ahead, Morgan.
I am studying to be a docent at the zoo, which I am so excited about.
And I'm so excited for you too. Okay, and Stone, what about you? What is your current passion?
I'm excited to be learning in school finally. Currently, I'm taking world history, geometry, English, and environmental science.
That is so exciting, Stone. Thank you for sharing. Moving right along, Sam, what wakes you up in the morning?
My AA this year. I want to travel more and see new places like London and other cities. I wake up every day just hoping for regulation and less anxiety. I am trying to take it one day at a time. I am learning to slow down and not get worked up about little things.
I love that answer. Thank you, Sam. Lavender, I'm going to move it over to Joe to answer for you. Do we have an answer from Lavender?
Not yet for this one.
Okay.
But Lavender, feel free to pop it in the chat and I can read it out when I see it come in. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on. And actually that's okay because the next slide we kind of had an open-ended question. And this might be an opportunity for any of our panelists, Mo or Lavender, Sam or Stone, and I know we have several AAC users in our audience tonight. Is there a topic you think our audience needs to learn about? And I think what we'll do, Joe, we didn't hash this out before, but we'll give, maybe like 1 to 3 minutes to see if anybody would like to answer this and put it in the chat. Or those of you who are using voice output, you can unmute yourself and just give us the ready so we know that you're going to be speaking. So we'll give you guys a couple minutes to maybe think about what's the topic? What do you think our audience needs to learn about? What else would you like to share in this forum tonight?
Mo contributed to the chat. Is it okay if I read that one out?
For sure. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Mo said, you need to understand we are in here. Which I've heard from so many of our AAC users and folks using spelling to communicate. So thank you so much, Mo.
If Sam can just say his answers. Sam.
Highly recommend everyone to unlearn and relearn about autism, non-speakers and our complex motor and sensory needs. Involve us more and nothing about us without us. Joining autistic groups and learning from autistics is a good start. Presuming competence is the very beginning skill we all can get behind.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, thank you, Sam, so much.
Mm-hmm. Morgan also wants us to know, I am so excited to be part of this. We are so excited for you to be part of this, all of you. Thank you so much.
I'll take the next comment. Sophie put in the chat, visual snow syndrome for sure. It's an important topic. Thank you, Sophie, for bringing that up. For our audience, Sophie and I are just starting our conversation about maybe coming back and helping us learn a little bit more about that, what that means for you, what it is and what it means for you in terms of interacting and accessing all of your communication systems. So stay tuned. We hope to have Sophie back. And then Sophie also writes in the chat, also, I am passionate about passion and want people to support us in our relationships. 100%, Sophie. Thank you so much. The relationships are everything, aren't they? That's the foundation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And Lavender chimed in too with an answer to our last question. She said, they say, what I wrote for this, I am absolutely not unique. And I am also absolutely not everyone. My communication is not a miracle or something that I can do only because I am super smart or different from other non-speakers. All of us have words to say. The only difference is that my support folks have given me all that I need to say them. I also reject any single narrative of what our lives are like. So many of us have deep ways that the way we process and communicate and use words and think are different besides just our apraxia. Your non-speaking child or client will not grow up to be me. They will be themselves. And whoever they are right now, whoever they will be later, they deserve communication, whatever that looks like. Lavender, that's amazing. They deserve communication, whatever it looks like. Absolutely. Rhiannon had a question. Oh, I can't tell if Stone is responding to that, but Stone did reply.
Yeah, David, do you want, how about I'll read it. Stone said, yes, whoop, yes, I think that all should listen to spellers and take us seriously. Otherwise, they underestimate us.
Mm-hmm. And Mo chimed in with lavender. That is so true, reacting to Lavender's last statement.
I think everyone starting now with little kids have a huge opportunity to help their kids right away. Don't wait for verbal speech. Communication first.
Second.
Thank you, Sam. Agreed. The game has changed, and SLPs need to keep up with it in terms of offering AAC, the new technologies we have, and then also not forgetting that for some, you know, there are other ways to communicate, as Lavender said as well. You know, it's not just limited to one modality. So also don't expect to put an iPad with Unity in front of someone and not teach them how to use it and expect that to work, or Proloquo to go, or any of the other programs that are out there. Morgan agrees with Sam, saying, right, Sam?
We'll take another minute to see if anybody else who is thinking about this question and wanting to give an answer, and then we'll move on. And if there are further comments in the chat, we'll read that at the end of our presentation tonight. I think Stone has a comment. I don't think I don't think I read this. How they believe in us will make a huge difference. Is there a topic you think our audience needs to know about? Yes. How they believe in us will make a huge difference. Thank you, Stone.
Morgan added in, I'm so happy this is getting attention. And yes, Stone.
Okay. Well, we'll let the comments kind of flow in, and we can read them out as we close up the evening. In summary, I think I'm taking this slide, Joe. Is that right? I think I am.
Sure, like.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to summarize and wrap up our series. Uh-oh, I just made my chat too big. Goodbye, chat. Okay, here we are. In summary, we, in going back to the statements that we made at the beginning of our series, and this started back in October. What were our intentions? What were we trying to do when we set out to put this series together? Well, as we already mentioned, these conversations are already happening with or without speech therapists. And that it is undeniable that individuals who primarily spell as a form of communication exist, and that some become independent typers. And we asked these questions. How did they learn to do that from motor, AAC, and literacy standpoints? And we asked the question, what can we learn from their paths, their journeys that will help speech therapists, teachers, everyone serve their clients, serve their students and the families better. And we thought that we would close the evening with the slide that we developed from session 2, which is this slide here. And Joe, you're going to go ahead and just kind of summarize this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we thought that this slide, in terms of sort of intellectual takeaways or intervention takeaways, really kind of summarize what we're seeing happening with spelling or text-based interventions for a lot of our non-speakers. So over on the left, we have evidence-based literacy programs that we covered in section 2, where literacy is taught. The focus is on reading and writing. So those very fundamental skills of phonemic awareness, using text to formulate ideas, but primarily for writing, which is a form of communication, but not the exact same form of communication that we use on a social level and every single day of our lives. But in these evidence-based literacy programs, motor access is assumed. It is assumed if someone can use their hands that that is reliable for them and that they'll be able to demonstrate their knowledge and learning progression using one of these motoric access methods, which I think Lavender addressed perfectly in their response, where that cannot be assumed for many of our autistic AAC users. So we have that side of the spectrum, which has strengths in literacy support, but weaknesses in motor support. And then on the other side of the spectrum, and this is obviously oversimplified, I'm not saying that either of these are, we're condensing a lot of information into one slide. So these are just kind of sweeping generalities, but spelling as a communication method programs, such as things like rapid prompting method that we saw a little bit of tonight, spelling to communicate, spellers method, facilitated communication. Elizabeth Bonker has a program out now where motor access is explicitly taught. And the focus is on output for in the moment communication, right? So like what we saw with RPM, we're coaching and teaching the eyes and the hands in order to be able to spell. And typically in these programs, foundational literacy skills are either assumed as part of presuming competence or they're revealed. Someone, as many of our panelists today say, they learn to read and write themselves through ways that were not, sometimes in spite of explicit literacy instruction. However, in the middle of our spectrum, we do have many individuals who would benefit from some sort of marrying of these two ends of the spectrum. In particular, folks with intellectual and learning disabilities, expressive and receptive language disorders, dyslexia, and at times hyperlexia, Gestalt language processors, and other sensory motor differences are really not being served by either extreme end of this spectrum. And we really need to think about how we can combine the two and bring in what is working from each of these programs in order to make something that works for as many people as possible. Because as, again, Lavender said, everyone deserves to communicate. One other thing that I wanted to make a shout out to is if people aren't already following Tiffany Hammond, who goes by Fidgets and Fries on multiple social media platforms. She is the autistic parent of 2 autistic young Black men. And she just wrote a really eloquent treatise on why she is choosing to use spelling as a method of communication for her son, who is non-speaking. And she pretty pointedly lays out the gaps in what we're doing right now to support non-speaking families, including some of the the ties that bind the SLPs in our field around ASHA's, warning against some spelling programs, and some of the things that are difficult for families with some of the spelling programs, like the cost and the lack of available trained communication partners in different areas. And she also really pointedly says speech therapy and spelling methods don't have to be at odds with one another. And there is a lot to learn from everyone, and SLPs do have or can have valuable input on this process for individuals. And so these conversations, as we said, are already happening. Families are learning about these things. They're learning from spellers who have come through the program and have had opportunities and communication unlocked for them. And so we as speech therapists really do need to be curious, thoughtful, and open to what we can learn, because our calling is to support people in finding their voice. And if we are gatekeeping how they find that voice or where they find that voice, that is very bad. It's not something that is within our ethics of practice. And so learning from this, not saying there's a perfect world out there yet, but we have a lot to learn, and much of that we can learn from listening to the voices of people who have come through this and who live this day in and day out.
Thank you, Jo.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to leave you with a quote from Sam that what Sam wrote to us from session 2, I believe. And Sam, I forgot to ask you if you wanted to read this yourself or if it was okay for myself or Jo to read this.
Mm.
Okay for Jo to read it.
Thanks, Sam. Okay. This is what Sam has taught us, among many other things. Communication, communication, and communication. Everything else will follow. Get access to low-tech and high-tech AAC as early as possible. Work with people who presume competence. Get access to age-appropriate education so you don't play catch-up like me. Don't let them tell you that you can get educated only if you sit quietly or behave a certain way. No textbook on earth says so. Once you start communicating functionally, take charge of your present and future. You are capable. Don't let them say otherwise. Only be around people who can support you. And remember, parents, experts, and educators can be wrong. This is why you need communication and education. These are human rights. Let's go grab them. Assume people mean to help you and they don't know how. Go for that letterboard, iPad, ASL, whatever you prefer. Speak your mind. Don't be embarrassed about getting support. More support doesn't mean less worthy. Let's change the narrative.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so what we're going to do now, because I think we just we're just past the hour. This is our closing slide. If you'd like more information on NWACS, if you'd like to volunteer with us. And if you'd like to stay connected with us, here's our mailing lists, and we are available on all the social media platforms. And what I'd like to do is stop our slide sharing and also stop the recording. Thank you everyone for attending.